You are listening to Cool 104.1, and this is Robert Ishoy, your host of Issues with Ishoy, and I got a fantastic show for you today. This topic that we are going to discuss today is going to hit home with everybody. We're going to talk about, I know. Because we're going to talk about housing. Okay.
You're so clever.
And I have two fantastic guests. I'm going to introduce them at this time. First, I have Sherry Ethell, a realtor with Long Realty right here in Sierra Vista. So Sherry, just kind of introduce yourself. How long have you been a realtor?
Yeah. So this is my 10th year with Long Realty. Before that, I was an environmental scientist for 26 years.
Oh.
So I've done all kinds of things. Yeah. Worked in national labs, worked for the Department of Defense, all kinds of things. And once we moved here, I always wanted to start my own business. So with my husband's job, we were moving every 2 years and had a lot of real estate experiences, good and bad. And I was like, you know what? I can make this process better. So I went and got my real estate license. I've been doing it for 10 years. We've been here 11 years. Dion retired, of course, from Border Patrol. And we decided to make this our home. We love it here.
Now, he works with you, your husband, in real estate, too.
Yeah, he retired. He retired and said, you know what, I see how busy you are. Maybe I could help. I'll get my license. He says he works more now than he did before. So we're keeping him busy. But yeah, retired from federal law enforcement. He was in charge of the Douglas Border Patrol Station. But we've been all over the country, D.C., Texas. All over the place.
So if you're looking to buy a house, there we go. We got Sherry Ethell,
sure.
right here at Long Realty.
Yeah, we've got a team.
Yeah.
So there's 5 of us now.
There you go.
We're actually going to be bringing on another agent as well. So making sure that the client experience is really good is what our focus is, as stress-free as possible.
All right. And my other guest is Anita Baca, the director of the Cochise County Housing Authority. So go ahead and give us a little introduction about you and your background.
I would be glad to. So I have been the director of the Housing Authority of Cochise County since 2009. Prior to that, I worked at the Bisbee Coalition for the Homeless as the executive director there. So my heart really goes out to helping people in need and serving others. And the fact that I can do that for a living is just the biggest blessing to me.
Okay.
So I'm really grateful, and Cochise County has been my home on and off since I was in 4th grade. Oh, wow. So I'm really invested here too. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's safe to say between the 3 of us, we got all aspects of this topic covered, and that was on purpose. Well, first of all, I do have a little gift from you. Our sponsor, Yay. Ruby's Divine Chocolate, sponsors this show. And
amazing.
A little gift for those that are listening on radio. It's a sample box of the gourmet chocolates from Ruby's Divine Chocolates. So there you go.
Love her shop. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chocolates. I can't wait to try it. And you need to stop by because they have more than chocolates. They have all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
They got really good beef jerky. They have all kinds of things. Yeah. Yes.
Now, so I'm going to kind of start out. You got to forgive me. I'm going to kind of go on a little bit of a rant to start off the show. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to kind of turn it over to you guys to kind of like maybe balance me out a little bit. But it's to me, it's a pretty serious issue. I'm going to start off with a little short story, very short story. And it's a real. So in 2006, I was still living in Las Vegas and I was tutoring at a high school. And one of the classes I was tutoring in was a real basic math class, like how to do a home budget, banking, real simple things like that. Mm-hmm. And during one of the classes, the teacher brought up the banker's rule. And she was teaching the students that in the banker's rule, your mortgage or your rent should only be 10% of your income. And I was like, okay, I can't say anything during the class. But after the class, I approached her and I said, this banker's rule. She goes, I know, I have to teach it because it's in the book, so I'm required to teach it. Yeah. And I thought, okay, because it's not even in 2006, it wasn't very realistic. But then I left, and when I was left, I started thinking, back in the early 70s, I remember my dad telling me that his income was about $1,200 a month, and his house payment was $120, exactly 10%. And I thought, back then that was real. The 50s, the 60s, even into the early 70s, you went to get a loan on a house and the banker would follow that rule. What's your income? Should only be something happened since then, because that's obviously not realistic anymore. But I am concerned especially about the rents, and specifically apartments. Again, I'm 67 years old. I've been around a while. Rents on apartments were always traditionally lower than a house. So if you're a young person starting off, you're working, you're going to school, you could get an apartment really reasonable. And that has changed. Oh my gosh. And I'm not worried about myself. I got my house and it's a good price, But I have 3 kids in their 20s and they're going to school, they're working, and I have one daughter paying $2,000 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment, and I'm like, something went wrong with that. And I've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people are hurting. I mean, some people are paying 50% for rent, of their income, and that's just that's hurting a lot of people. So I'm going to propose a solution at the end of the show. You have to watch the whole show in order to hear my solution. It's going to be controversial, I'm sure, but I'm going to throw it out there. But I'm going to wait till the end. So now what I want to do is get your input. Sherry, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
So let's say I'm a renter out there. I'm renting an apartment, right? And it's 600 square feet, and I'm paying $1,500 a month for this little tiny apartment.
Right.
I want to get into a house.
Yes. I literally just had a client do this.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. So financially, what am I looking at? What are some of the options, for maybe like a first-time buyer? Mm-hmm. Is it a little easier, kind of give us a how-to kind of situation.
So the first point I'm going to make is, rent does fluctuate, right? Rent goes up, and we're seeing that. That's why these folks came to me, because their rent had increased so high that they're like, we could buy a house cheaper than this. So there's the opportunity for starter homes out there where you can get a home that's cheaper than you would pay for rent. So is it a good idea? Absolutely. Are there programs out there? Absolutely. There's even programs where everybody's concerned about the interest rates being in the 6s. You can ask the seller to help you buy down your interest rate 2% the first year. So you would have an interest rate in the fours. So my recommendation, first of all, is to always meet with a lender. We've got fantastic lenders here in Sierra Vista. Get in touch with them, and we can help with that too. If you don't have one, give us a call. We can recommend some great ones for you, and sit down with them, go over the numbers, what makes sense. Because even sometimes people will qualify for more than what they really want to afford in a monthly payment. So that's part of the process too. Yeah.
I've never heard of that before. Run that by me one more time.
The 2-1 buy down.
The interest, how you can lower that.
Right. So it's a program. It's come up after we went from the 2s and 3s. It came out of that. So the seller, it's usually about 2% of the purchase price. The seller can contribute to that and buy down your interest rate 2% the first year. So say it's 6, it would be 4. The second year, it's 1%. So instead of 6, it'd be 5.
Wow.
And then the third year, 6%. But by then, hopefully, interest rates have changed, maybe gone down, maybe there's more programs, and you can refinance. And most of the lenders aren't charging you a fee to do that.
Fantastic.
So it's a great program, and not a lot of people know about it. But yeah, first-time home buyers, there's and VA. Most of our buyers, the majority of our buyers here are VA, whether they're retired or active duty, and so many benefits. No down payment, lower interest rates. Some of the lenders they're in the 5s for interest rates, where conventional is in the 6s. So.
Yeah, and you're right, because I bought my house in 2011 and a good price, but the interest rate was like the mid 5s. I refinanced during COVID and got 2.5. Did you? Yeah, like absolutely. They're going to go down. Right. Interest rates go up and down, so it's not like you're stuck with that interest rate forever. There's going to be an opportunity.
Right.
I want to ask you about VA, see if that's true, because you're right, there are a lot of veterans. When I bought my house, I was not a disabled veteran at the time. Right. I had never gone through the process. And I was going to get hit with fees,
Right.
VA fees, which was a lot.
Right.
And now I'm a disabled veteran, but so I didn't use the VA loan. So
You
that's
didn't?
no, because of the fees.
Oh wow.
It was like almost $5,000
Okay.
in fees. I'm like,
Yeah.
I didn't want to add that to my house.
Yeah.
So is that still true? That you do
So there
that?
are funding fee. There's some fees, but if you are disabled, of course, it's less. So
well,
that's,
if you're disabled, they said they'd eliminate them.
right.
Yeah.
Well, some of them, not all of them.
All of them.
Right.
So-
Yeah. So some of them.
So so listen to this, veterans. If you want to buy a house,
Use your VA benefits. Absolutely.
get even a 10%
Yeah.
disability rating. And if you've served in the military, I guarantee you got something wrong.
Like hearing loss. Or
Yes.
Yeah.
You got something that you can get a rating on, and
Yeah.
you only
And
need.
a little plug. So Warrior Healing Center, they helped my dad get that.
Yes.
He's
Yep.
yeah.
Right.
So people
We
don't
had
know.
we
yeah,
had
you had my dad on the
our
show.
first show. We had a guest from the Warrior Hill. So get a rating,
Yes.
and then you won't have to pay those fees to the VA.
Mhm.
So that's
And with the changes in the interest rates, the changes in the market, seller concessions where they actually help the buyer with costs like closing costs or interest rate buy downs, it's more common now. So back when the interest rates were 2 and 3 and it was like a feeding frenzy, no, you couldn't get help with stuff
Yeah.
like that. But now you can. So even if there are fees, you can always ask the seller with a good offer, they might help you with that. So
now definitely the market on houses, it goes up, it goes down. We've all lived through that. Of course, 2008 when you have something like that. But just even on a normal basis,
right.
prices. Has that ever happened with apartment? Because I think when apartments they don't lower their rent. They
I've
don't.
never seen one lower.
No.
And that's the thing. If you have a house, your payment is the same.
Yeah.
Like forever until you pay it off. Or you
Right.
sell it.
So,
right?
but if you
Yeah.
get an apartment, they don't come and say, you know what, the market has changed. I'm going to lower your rent on. No, they don't do that. And yet you would think they should, because it's like,
Right.
okay, if the housing prices went down,
Right.
why isn't the rent on an apartment going?
Yeah.
Because the rent on a house would go down. Am I right?
I don't know about that. I don't
No?
do property management, so I can't speak to that.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I haven't seen it do that, but
Yeah.
I'm not an expert.
So you've got
I
it.
haven't
So,
seen it
yeah.
either. I've seen them. I've definitely seen them go up
Yeah.
when the market increases.
Right.
I've
Yeah.
never seen them.
No.
Go back
Come back
down.
Yeah. Kind of an issue with that. I don't know. I have an issue with that. So you have a lot of experience with apartments, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead, give us now. My understanding is, and this is something I'm going to talk about at the end too, and see what you think. But you have apartment complexes that will have a certain number of apartments that are available to really low income. Am I right?
Yes, they are. They're income based. We have 25 of them in Cochise County, and our programs through the Housing Authority are all voucher based. So it means that they're not tied to a brick and mortar building.
Oh.
So the voucher is issued based on the family composition and the income, as well as the payment standards, and so the family can go and pick out the home that they want to live in. It can be someone who's already on the program, or somebody who would like to be on the program. And there are a lot of benefits to being on the program as well. So with that, they can do single family, they can do multifamily, they can do mobile homes after 1976 that were built prior or post 1976. But a couple years ago, when the market really started to rise, we saw some for-profit companies come in and buy some multifamily units. And most of the managers in these apartment complexes work on a salary base plus a commission. And so the way that our programs work is, just as long as that size unit is within the payment standard that the family is issued, then they can move into, say they have a 1-bedroom voucher, but it's within that 1-bedroom payment standard. They can live in a 3-bedroom home as long as the owner manager is only charging within that 1 bedroom payment standard. So we had some apartment complexes who did that, that the managers put people with 1-bedroom vouchers into larger units. And then these for-profit companies came in and bought some of these apartment complexes, jacked up the rents substantially. And it was, I tried pleading with them based on, the population, because they were not only Section 8, HUD-VASH, or HOPA, which are our programs, but they were also low-income housing tax credits through the Arizona Department of Housing. So I tried to plead with them based on who's living there, because it affected many of our people who had to move out of those apartments. But one of them had to pay over $400 more a month out of her pocket had she stayed.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Because they jacked it up so much.
You think they would honor the...
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're on a fixed income and all of a sudden you have to pay $400 a month more, you're forced out.
That's exactly what they did. What they came in and they increased that 3-bedroom to the 3-bedroom payment standard, although that person had a 1-bedroom voucher, because HUD pays 70% of the rent while the family pays 30%. And or roughly pays 30%. It varies, but.
And this is obviously a program for people that are very low, struggling. I picture, a single mom or a single dad, they got 2 kids, they got a job, but it's very hard to make it and they need help. And what we don't want them homeless. We don't want them on the street with 2 kids. Right. So we have a program to help those people. And I think that's fantastic, but you got to have the cooperation of the private sector to do this, right?
Yes.
So, that kind of fit. I did a little research. The county, Cochise County, actually has a website where you can go in by partial and to see who owns what, and it was kind of tough to search, but I managed to do some search, because you hear these stories about certain places in the country where big corporations bought a bunch of homes, and then raised the prices. I didn't see that in Cochise County, honestly, for homes. Do you? No.
And that's, I was telling you earlier, when you look at real estate, it's super local. Like what's happening here is not what's happening in Phoenix.
Yeah. So I didn't see that with homes. Most of the homes were owned. I found one company that owned 35 properties. Half of them were vacant land.
Oh.
And they're a local investment company. So 35 is not very big.
No.
But apartments, I did see it.
Okay.
I saw one company, I'll say the name, it was a big company, Avenue 5. I'll say Avenue 5, which is it's a property management company nationwide. They have properties almost in every state across the country. They own 4 of the big properties right here in Sierra Vista. Oh, wow. And their rents are up there. I mean, their rents up some of them are over 2,000. And there was a couple other companies so it seems like with apartments, it's not controlled locally. We have big companies that come in and buy properties and, they're property management companies. You never know really who the owners are.
Yeah.
But I think that supports what you're saying, is they came in, they buy up, and they're like, oh, we're just going to raise all the rents.
Wow. And I was stunned that there wasn't anything prohibiting these people saying, you can't increase the rent beyond a certain percent. There wasn't a rule in HUD. HUD recommended not to raise it more than 10%, but it wasn't a rule. I didn't find a state law that prohibited them from doing that. So as far as our programs are concerned, effective July 1st, the now people landlords cannot request more than 10% of the gross rent within a calendar year. And they have to do that 60 days prior to the recertification. Actually,
in my research, I found that in the 1980s, the state of Arizona actually did pass a law prohibiting counties and cities from implementing rent control.
Oh.
So now in the 1980s, I kind of think yes, I've lived long enough to remember these things. But I lived through the recession of the 70s, which was really tough. It was a bad recession.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that maybe that because there was a lot of states in the country that did put rent controls in place back then.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that was a backlash in the 80s. But I imagine it was not homeowners and renters that pushed for that law. I imagine it was these big property owners that, lobbied for it. But my thinking, and again, this is what I was going to bring up at the end, the idea of rent control, which would be controversial. A lot of people, oh my God, you're going to have government dictating. But I personally think something has to be done. And rent control should, in my opinion, be a decision that counties and cities should make for themselves. Because like you said,
super local. Yeah.
Yes.
Sierra Vista is not the same as Phoenix. Phoenix isn't the same as Flagstaff.
Right.
So I don't like the idea of the state doing a blanket law across all the cities and counties.
Yeah.
We should be able to make that decision for ourselves. If we don't want it, fine. But if we, as a group of a population, if we think it's a good idea, we should be able to do it. So I'm pretty passionate about that. So if you're a young person and you're paying those high rents, you might want to look and get together with some other renters and say, go to your state legislative body and say, repeal that law.
Right.
There you go. I did it. I'm putting my neck out there. Yeah, because I personally, I think that's something that we should be able to decide locally.
Right.
And now there's different forms of rent control. Some are more extreme, like, one form is like saying you can only charge so much per square foot. That's pretty extreme form. But the most common one is what you were saying, is a lot of places have a rent control. You can only raise the rent a certain percentage per year so that people aren't all of a sudden paying $1,000 one month and then, their rent comes up and, oh no, it's going to be $2,000 now. That's pretty drastic. So that one I think is pretty reasonable. And that's what you were talking about.
Yes.
So we good. That's my big controversy.
Buy a house.
Yeah. So you don't even have to deal with it if you go out and buy a house.
What do the vouchers look like? Is there a certain dollar amount, or like from a housing side, are there opportunities for people to buy investment properties and maybe make it available to those folks?
There is definitely the opportunity to do that, and it's very beneficial to become a landlord under one of the programs because the reason I keep on saying one of the programs is because we have 825 vouchers in Cochise County.
Oh, wow.
And we're the Board of Supervisors just passed our 5-year plan to keep on applying for more as they come up. And so with that, you can, the owner / landlord can be guaranteed that they're going to receive 70% of that rent, that contracted rent from HUD by the first workday of each month. And it's even automatically deposited into the account of their choice. And then, but we also, the housing assistance payment contract is a 3-way contract with the tenant, the landlord, and the housing authority. And part of the tenant obligation is that they fulfill their portion and keep their utilities current. So they would be jeopardizing their voucher if they decided that they weren't going to pay their 30% portion. Okay. So it's a very beneficial program.
Yeah. And from somebody that is receiving help from the county, so you have that county oversight too. You don't want to lose that program if you're in it. I'm sure.
Yeah. So the expectation to keep the house up in the yard and things like that are not a concern.
So I'm just gonna a quick reminder to our listeners. This is Cool 104.1, and you are listening to Issues with Ishoy. I'm your host, Robert Ishoy, and my two guests is Anita Baca, with the director of the Cochise County Housing Authority, and Sherry Ethell, a local realtor right here with Long Realty. And we are discussing the housing issues in Cochise County. You know, the rents, buying a house, which is a better choice, the high cost of housing and our rent is affecting a lot of people. And I like your idea of buying a house. Okay.
Right.
And so, and a lot of people is like, oh, I can't afford a house. Well, if you're paying high rent, you probably can afford a house.
And you can get creative, right? So we're seeing kids, I mean, you're not going to be able to afford your parents' house, right? So I think the expectation is going to be a starter home.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But you can do things like do the multi-family, multi-generational house, like bring grandma in and, you know, help out with the mortgage payments, or they call it house hacking. So rent out a room in your house.
Get a roommate
with the mortgage. So there's all kinds of options.
Yeah.
If you're a first time home buyer, as well as, you know, lending programs. There's some like USDA, FHA. We have all of those in this area that have like down payment assistance, and the interest rates are reasonable. So there's a lot of opportunity.
And then that's where you start. You start talking to a realtor,
right.
And the realtor can explain all these different options. Seriously.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know what the options are out there.
Especially if you're 20, you know, you're 24 years old and you've never,
And like you said, in the past, it was always cheaper to rent. You know,
but not anymore.
Right? You get out of college, you rent an apartment, but not anymore.
Even for elderly, I think, okay, you know, let's say, you know, I have an acre of ground and I got a house and a swimming pool. I have another building where my mother-in-law used to live, who passed away last year, with a second guy. And my mortgage is $900 a month. You know, okay. I mean, yes. And then with the taxes and insurance, it's about 30.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to downsize, let's say I'm getting too old, I don't want to take care of this big house and yard.
Yeah.
I would pay more money for an apartment than my house.
Yeah.
So what would be the point of downsizing?
You can downsize into a smaller house.
I could, yes, there you go. Yeah, sell mine and pay cash. Now that would be a smart idea.
Right? Because people don't know this. 40% of homeowners own their houses outright right now in the United States.
Are you serious?
Yeah, 40%.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then the other, like the next 30%, they have over 50% equity in their house.
Wow.
Yeah.
And while you're on percentages, to counter that, more than 40% of Americans are paying above 30% for rent. 30% of their income for rent.
Above 30%.
That 10% rule is
gone. That's. I don't think we'll ever get back to the 50s and 60s. That's gone forever.
Although inflation is dropping.
Yes.
So that's a big thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like at 2.5, I think was the last number I saw, and the Federal Reserve target is like 2%. So once it gets 2 and below, there might be, you know, some interest rate cuts.
Yeah.
We're expecting to see like 3 or 4 over the next year.
And I don't want to offend anybody that rents, but
there's reasons for it sometimes.
There is.
You know?
But historically, being a historian, got my degree in history, I'm going to compare to the Roman Empire.
Oh.
You know, because you read about the Roman Empire when you study about it. You know, early Rome, most of the people were property owners.
Oh, yeah.
You know, farmers, merchants, you know, the guy that made pottery, and they had their own business, and they all had homes. When Rome became big, an empire, and the city of Rome became the largest city in the world, they built apartment buildings. A lot of people don't realize that. Yes.
I didn't either.
The majority at that time, the majority of the people in the city of Rome lived in apartments.
Oh, wow.
And and when you lose that property ownership, which makes you, generally speaking, historically, makes you a more conservative, solid citizen because you have an interest, right? You're like, I own property. You know, I want to protect my property. And so when they became apartment owner or livers, they didn't have that. And that's when they started the circus to appease those, because they were also on welfare. The Roman citizens were basically on welfare.
I didn't know they had that.
Yeah, because Rome, all this money coming into a city in Rome, and they just like, So they started the circus to keep them all appeased, you know, the lions eating people and all that stuff. So, you know, there is a lot of advantage to being a property owner.
Right.
You know,
it builds your wealth.
Yeah,
right?
It builds your wealth.
It's a great investment.
Gives you a solid interest in the betterment of your community, you know. Now, when people are in your program that are struggling, I imagine the goal is to maybe in the future get them there. Am I right?
Yes, we have a family self-sufficiency program that is designed to empower families who are at zero income to little income, and they're in the position to improve their household income. And it's a 5-year contract, and that the family enters in, the head of the household enters into with the family self-sufficiency coordinator. So whether it's furthering their education, becoming a business owner, whatever their personal goals are, they enter into that, and as their income increases, so does their portion of the rent. So say their portion of the rent goes up by $100, ours goes down by $100, but we take that $100 and put it in an escrow account for the family. Oh, nice. And at the end of the 5 years, that the family gets, when they successfully complete the program and graduate, then they get whatever is in that escrow account, and the escrow account is interest bearing. And,
wow!
And so,
there's your down payment.
Yeah, people use it for down payment. Yeah, right.
What a good! That's an excellent program.
Yeah,
it's a program that helps people build their own future. I like that. So they're just feel stuck. That's fantastic, and that's what we need. That to help. I mean, as you think of as a community, we want to help each other. And provide different services to help people and to get out of situations that that we don't really want to be in. Have some kind of hope and goals. That's fantastic. What a great program. So you're here in Cochise County. What can the people of Cochise County to do to help this program?
The HUD.
Yeah, all the stuff you do.
So if you're a homeowner and you want to become a landlord, we can always use more landlords on the program. So, but we do have a lot of great support here in the community. We collaborate with a lot of different organizations and a lot of property owners and real estate companies, and so we really do have great collaboration. But if you're interested in becoming a landlord, you can call me at 520-432-8880.
There you go. Say it one more time.
520-432-8880.
There you go. Okay. So there we are. What else do we have to add? Have we missed anything? We have Sherry here that can get you into a house.
Yes.
Or any realtor that you can talk to. There's a lot of good realtors here in Sierra Vista.
Absolutely, yeah.
But Sherry's our guest, so we're going to promote her.
We're the best.
If you're really seriously thinking about getting into a home, you think maybe you're not ready, talk to a realtor.
Yeah, give me a call. No obligation. We can sit down and chat. Yeah.
And if it turns out they're not quite ready, you could probably give them advice, I imagine,
Absolutely.
how to maybe.
And the lenders can do that too. We have a disabled vet here now that needs to move to Tucson to be closer to his sister because he's getting to the point where he can't drive, and his credit score was super low. So he met with a local lender. Can I do a shout out?
Sure.
So Aaron Johnson with Good Loans. Yeah, met with him because he was told that he couldn't qualify. Met with him, told him over 6 months, this is what you need to do, and then you'll qualify.
Wow.
So there's always, even if you think you can't, let's get you connected with a lender that can help.
That's quick, 6 months.
Yeah.
Right.
And he was in the 5s, I think. So,
wow.
Yeah. So it's possible.
Okay.
Yeah. So don't be discouraged.
Yeah. So
Come talk to me.
And there are advantages to having your own place. It's so nice to be able to say, I want to paint the walls and go pick out your paint and, or decorate or, I like the garden.
I know, me too. I was just going to say, plant in the yard.
Yeah. I mean, grow your own food. I mean, I'll promote that. I grow a big garden every year. Yeah. And I have to give away half the food, but it's so good. Yeah. You eat
can have chickens.
You can have chicken.
Yeah. On Hereford.
Yeah.
Chickens.
Yep. Yeah. So there's a lot of advantages to having your house. But if you're a person that's struggling and low income situation, and I imagine you get people all different types of situations. I can kind of picture even like say a woman that's in a domestic violence situation. And she has to get out of that home and maybe she's just working part-time and she needs, am I right? Somebody like that it's like, I need a new place to live. I got to get out of the situation I'm in.
Mhm.
I can't afford my own place. She could get help.
Mhm.
Well, what we've done is we've added survivors of domestic violence to one of our preferences, so it helps people move up the Section 8 waiting list faster.
Okay.
Everybody here has probably heard about how long one can stay on the Section 8 waiting list before being pulled, because we opened it up last year, and we received 1,200 applications.
Wow.
So we have that preference, but HUD also recognized that very need and a couple years ago, created a program called emergency housing vouchers. So we also work closely with shelters here in the community. They do the needs assessment, and then they've referred them to us. Unfortunately, those vouchers were only for a portion of time. So while we still have people holding those vouchers, new people aren't coming in under that program, because it was a great program. We didn't have that long wait list telling somebody fleeing a domestic violence situation, oh, you know what, the waiting list is going to be probably 2 years out before we can offer you a voucher.
Wow. Is that just because of the shortage of available housing?
It was,
that can house the Section 8?
no, we're only allocated a certain number of vouchers.
Oh. Okay.
Regardless
So,
of the
yeah,
what's
Of the
available.
need. Okay.
Yeah, so right now we're spending 103% of our budget authority.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So you don't have a problem finding enough places to fit the vouchers? Is that right?
No, typically our voucher holders, once they're issued the vouchers, the voucher is good for up to 120 days. Typically, it takes about 45 to 60 days for someone to find housing in our area.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people also want to stay in their existing housing. So we'll talk to the owner, landlord, and if they're not already on the program, and tell them the benefits.
So you're getting good support from the community as far as
Yes.
Having enough housing to fit people in. And the thing I like is that you said they get to pick.
Yes.
You're not
Yeah.
forcing them to say, well, you got to live in this neighborhood, or you got to live in. They get to actually go out and shop for their own place. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
That if they're on that program. So again, this stuff is available if you're in need, and trust me, a lot of us have been there. Okay, there was a time in my life, believe it or not, it was a short period, but I was actually without a house. Was homeless. I had a job.
Yeah.
I had a job, but circumstances, I was sleeping in my truck.
Okay. Yeah.
So I've been there, so there's no shame. If you're going through a tough time, get the help that you need. It's right here in Cochise County. This lady runs the program. Okay. So yeah, get the help you need. And then you can always build from there,
Yeah.
and yeah, but stuff happens in life. And sometimes you find yourself, it was in Las Vegas too.
Wow.
That's a scary place to be homeless.
That's hot. Is that the summertime?
Well,
It's a hot time to be in your car.
Yeah, it is.
yeah. So, yeah, there we are. So we have everything for you on this show. You got the help if you need it. You've got good realtors that are available to help you get into a house. And I still encourage, especially the young people, that law up in Arizona state capitol, we might want to look about repealing that. And then cities and counties can make their own decisions. I think that one form of rent control makes sense. I really do. I think it's out of control, and people should be able, even our store, our landlord every once in a while raises the rent on us, but it's very marginal, it's very minimal.
Right.
And you're like, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
If they were to come along and double our rent,
Right.
at the end of the year, we'd probably have to close the store.
Yeah.
Honestly, it'd be like,
Yeah.
okay,
Right.
we're going to close the store. So I think that makes sense that there should be that type of rent control at least. You can only raise it so much. But again, this is, Cool 104.1, and we were discussing housing right here in Cochise County. Make your comments. Let us know what you think. Is there anything we did that could help you? And that's what we're here for. Okay? And thank you for joining us.